Employment in South Africa declined at an annualized rate of 2.1% in March. This means that the economy shed over 33,000 jobs. For more now, Lone Sharp, who's a labour economist at Adcorp, joins us at the desk this afternoon. Lone, still the bearer of bad news?
Yes, it's very disappointing. It suggests the economy is much weaker than we appreciated. We're still expecting the economy to pick up gradually during the course of the rest of this year and certainly next year, as most economists are. And the jobs growth figures should lift with the state of the economy. But our modelling suggests the economy needs to grow 4% per annum just to absorb all the new entrants into the labour market each year. And the economy needs to grow above 8% per annum to make substantial inroads into our formal sector unemployment problem. So unfortunately, we've got a major issue. It was for a time a significant focus of government, but unemployment now seems to be lagging and lingering in the background, I think because the political will necessary to tackle the labour market just doesn't exist. But I think in a way, more of these disappointing employment figures make labour market reform inevitable.
Inevitable. Well, we've been saying that for quite a long time now, Lone. Let me look at this one paragraph, or rather read to you what you wrote in your report. It says, these perturbing job numbers cut right across the employment sector and are coupled with worrying trends in terms of both unfilled vacancies for skilled people in SA's private sector, and in brackets you say 829,000 in 2012, and also unemployed graduates, which have now topped 580,000. I was recently in Spain, and when I spoke to young people in the street in Barcelona, they said, we're not going to get a job, so we're going to go overseas. Is there going to be a brain drain? I mean, this is getting really, really bad now.
Well, you've got to look at the character and quality of these unemployed graduates. The universities and other tertiary institutions have been totally irresponsible in admitting young people for study in areas that are out of kilter with the job demand in the labour market. So, for example, universities, and this includes our top-tier universities, have, instead of thorough racial transformation, been admitting black students to the arts, humanities and social sciences and left the other faculties largely unchanged. The FET colleges, the further education and training colleges operated by the government, 260 campuses of them around the country, are in such a dysfunctional state that your probability of finding a job is lower with an FET qualification than without one. So really our skills sector is in a total state of chaos. But at the same time, young people with high skills are being absorbed very readily into the labour market. So the unemployment rate among high-skilled people is just 0.4%. So what we actually need, instead of people immigrating, is we need relaxation of the immigration laws that make it almost impossible for high-skilled foreigners to find work in South Africa.
Let's take a look at where this puts the emphasis when it comes to what we need to start doing domestically. You've highlighted in your report that we need to get up to speed with a more effective skills development program. I mean, why aren't we seeing enough stride being made in that regard? We've had education days on the show. We've had Labour days on through CNBC Africa's programming, and we've always had it highlighted that skills development, training, upskilling a labour force is our major impediment right now.
Well, to some extent, the whole skills development idea has been hijacked politically by government. Remember, what we need to stimulate job growth and economic growth is labour market reform. But labour market reform is politically unpalatable. So government searches hither and thither for every alternative excuse except labour market reform for our unemployment problem. And of course, skills development seems like a very natural one. If you upskill people, they will find work. And certainly that's true for very high-skilled people, professionals and senior managers. It's not true of artisans. So I think skills development has been dramatically overdone, and certainly the experience of nearly 20 years has shown us that tens of billions of rands poured down the drain have not resulted in any significant job growth. So I think we really need to go back and have a labour market commission which re-looks at the entire labour market infrastructure, private and public, to see what aspects of it work and which don't. I mean, the Minister of Higher Education is now embarking on a really misguided attempt to grab payroll taxes that were paid to the National Skills Fund for use by the SETAs and spend that on FET colleges which are in a total state of collapse. So there's not even government or correct government diagnosis of the problem. There's really just looking for easy political alternatives to what is really needed, being labour market reform.
I love speaking to you every month, Loan, but you are quite depressing, I must say, but it's a depressing subject. How reliable are all these numbers, your numbers at AdCorp and also from Statistics South Africa? Officially, we've got an unemployment rate of around about, let's call it 25%. Unofficially, 35%. Youth unemployment probably about 50%. But on the other hand, some people say to me, but that's not the real story, because there is informal employment, people who are not registered as workers but actually doing work and making money. Give us a sense of exactly where you think the unemployment rate is.
The government is correct when they say that formal sector unemployment is about 25%. They're correct. But they don't recognize a growing, burgeoning, in fact, informal economy that is occurring in South Africa. If you include everyone who has a regular source of income, if that's your definition of employment, then our unemployment rate in South Africa is about between 10 and 11%. Now, that doesn't mean that those people have formal sector jobs. It doesn't mean that they have a medical aid and pension fund or a written employment contract. These are the sorts of things that the government recognizes as qualities of employment. Less and less employment has those official characteristics, which is why the official unemployment rate is out of kilter with what's going on in the economy. So yes, we believe at AdCorp the unemployment rate is substantially lower if you include the informal sector, which is vastly undercounted by the government statisticians. But that doesn't mean we don't have a problem, for example, of poverty among people eking out a living in the informal sector. There certainly are problems that need to be addressed, but a lot more people are economically active than the government implies.
Mm-hmm. We were talking about the country experiencing a possible brain drain moving forward. When it comes to foreigners looking to work in South Africa, I mean, what kind of appetite have you gotten a sense or been able to gauge just what kind of appetite we're looking at from foreigners looking to work within South Africa's borders?
The average backlog for high-skilled professionals seeking work in South Africa is now 7 years. There is no attempt within the Department of Home Affairs to reduce that backlog. Routinely, highly educated surgeons, teachers, nurses and others are being turned away in South Africa, and government is actually moving in the wrong direction. Immigration laws have recently been severely restricted. For example, you could previously use an immigration agent as a company. That is now disallowed. It's immigration practitioners are no longer allowed by the Department of Home Affairs, and also quota work permits have been banned. So you can't, as Anglo-American, now apply for 50 mining engineers en bloc. Each of those mining engineers has to now be applied for personally, in person, individually, which has been absolutely catastrophic for supplementing our skills shortage from abroad. But politically, government is hoping that by restricting foreigners from getting these jobs, that by some miracle, the unskilled people who populate our labour market are going to find these jobs. It's just staggering the degree of naivety behind these policies.
Loan, of all countries in the world, given our political and social history, I think South Africa has the least right to be xenophobic, because this smacks of xenophobia to me.
You know, xenophobia, being hatred of foreigners, is a euphemism we've come across in South Africa, because what it really is racism. It's a kind of nationalistic racism that we're observing in the labour market. But you know, we are inclined to use political euphemisms in South Africa. What xenophobia really is, as we've observed it in South Africa, is competition for jobs. And South Africa, under apartheid, had a very long history of restricting access to employment opportunities for designated groups. We're perpetuating that policy in the most ironical way, and really there's just no sense in government, when we engage with them, that they even recognize these issues and the irony of them. And the internal contradictions of them. So I have no hope that these issues will be addressed.